If you'd announce that, Mr. Heher.
Thank you, Mayor.
Excuse me, we'll do a roll call first.
And I'd like the roll call. That's very good.
Councilmember McNamee.
Here.
Councilmember Engler.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Newman.
Here.
And Mayor Adam.
And I'm here.
Thank you.
And now the announcement of the closed session.
Thank you again, Mayor. We have two items. The first one is pending litigation, California Department of Housing and Community Development versus Shangri-La Industries et al. It's in Los Angeles County Superior Court, case number 24ST-CV00629, and this is pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A. The second matter is pending litigation, F. Roberts Construction, Inc. versus Shangri-La Industries, LLC et al. This is in Ventura County Superior Court, 2023 CU-BC 018021, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, Subdivision A. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Heger. We'll be back in an hour. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get our council meeting started. Mr. Heher, anything to report from the closed session?
Mayor, there is nothing to report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. If you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Hand over your hearts. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'm going to head down for a special presentation. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So tonight, we're going to talk about recognizing Earth Day in the city of Thousand Oaks. It's been recognized in 192 countries around the world since 1970. I went to the original Earth Day in 1970 in Philadelphia. All right, there we go. Thank you very much. Thank you, that's great. So back in 1970, there were 3.6 billion people on the planet Earth. In 2024, there are 8 billion people on planet Earth. That's twice as many people in 54 years. And I read somewhere, and this is all on Spaceship Earth, because remember, we're a spaceship orbiting the sun. And I read somewhere the Earth has a capacity for about 10 billion. So we're getting close. So it's really important that we treat this planet well. And in Thousand Oaks, we combine Earth Day with Arbor Day, because we are all known for our urban forests and our oak trees. We want to preserve those as well. And this will be the 26th annual recognition of Arbor Earth Day and our commitment to environmental sustainability. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about our Climate Environmental Action Plan, which is fitting. And we're going to commit ourselves to future actions to ensure life on our planet for future generations. And I'd like to have a gentleman join me here at the podium, Rod Cordova. He's an analyst for our sustainability division. He's going to tell us a little bit about the planned festivities. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you.
There you go, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Adam and members of the council. The city's annual Arbor Earth Day celebration is a springtime community tradition, and it will take place this year on Saturday, April 20th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Thousand Oaks Community Park. Now in its 26th year, this popular family event is a source of civic pride for the city, bringing together leaders, experts, and the community to learn about environmental sustainability. The event location itself, Thousand Oaks Community Park, provides an ideal educational setting to engage with our residents through outreach and discussions, children's activities, displays, and hands-on demonstrations. This year's event will include an electric vehicle display area where local EV owners will display their vehicles and be available to the public to answer questions and provide firsthand experience and insight on EV ownership. The Ventura County Master Gardeners will be giving away a variety of California native plants, which is very timely because next week is California Native Plant Week. Athens Services will be on hand to answer any trash and recycling service questions. They will also be doing a recycling sorting game with kids, and they will be providing free compost, which is always a hit with our residents. The Popular Bike Rodeo is back this year, which is a fun educational activity for kids to learn about bicycle and pedestrian safety in a simulated traffic situation. Kids can bring their own bike, or they can choose from a variety of different size bikes that are provided. They'll be fitted with a new bicycle helmet to navigate the course, and they can keep the helmet when they are finished. The Canal Rec and Park District will be collecting unwanted, previously owned or new bicycles from residents for donation, which they then distribute to teens and underserved youth in the Canal Valley. Other kids' activities will include arts and crafts with Create Studio, where they use recycled materials. There will be kids' recycling games and face painting. And of course, the park has a new bug-themed playground, which is fitting for our event. The Public Works Sustainability Division will be conducting outreach and education on the city's various environmental programs and initiatives, including the Climate and Environmental Action Plan, which you will hear more about this evening. There'll be demonstrations on drip irrigation installation, biochar, drought-tolerant grasses, and ground covers. And there will be many other nonprofit and environmental organizations providing outreach and education, such as the Surfrider Foundation, Canal Valley Open Space Foundation, Santa Monica Mountains Foundation, and Los Flores Community Garden, to name a few. There will be live music by the Three Rivers Band. There will be raffles for portable induction cooktops, kitchen compost pails, reusable water bottles, and bag giveaways, and more. So in closing, I would like to formally invite you, Mayor Adam, and members of the council to come experience the event for yourselves. Again, the festivities begin at 10 a.m. at Thousand Oaks Community Park, which is located right next to Thousand Oaks High School, 2525 North Moore Park Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. Free compost, what could be better? All right. Rod, I'd like to present you a proclamation declaring Arbor Earth Day. We do combine the name, Arbor Earth Day, here in Thousand Oaks, to honor our trees as well. And would you like to come up and get a picture with the council?
Absolutely.
All righty, on to public comments. If you'd announce that, please, Ms. McGuire.
This is the time and place for public comments. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. 4 individuals have requested to speak, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Ms. McGuire. And first up, we have John.
Good evening, guys.
Evening.
Girls. On January 16th, y'all voted the consent calendar to include bathrooms used by both boys and girls. I don't think this is a good idea. I think if you look in your heart, I think you might agree something bad about that. But I think we should protect the children. But I'm hoping that maybe you guys can do something to reverse it. I thought this kind of stuff would be going away, but it just keeps getting crazier and crazier. And I wasn't even going to talk about it, but I think I've hit my limit where I got to say something. And I think we should all reach that limit at some point and say something. King David in the Bible, in a psalm, he was doing some contemplation in Psalm 32, and he said, "When I kept silent, my bones grew old. My vitality was turned into the drought of summer." So anyway, that kind of hit me. But I think you guys representing us and protecting the children and everything, I think you need to stand up against the state on this one and say, hey, we're not going to do this. No, not here in TO. Because at some point down the road, you might have to look in the mirror and ask yourself how you could have prevented some tragedy or something bad. And don't tell me that ship has sailed or that train has left the station. I know that was January 16th, and that whole process is already ongoing right now. But you can turn it around if you want to. And if anybody tells you different, talk to somebody else. You just got to find the right technique. A lot of people say, oh, our hands are tied in a lot of cases like this because it's maybe a law or some new code. But I think we should really, really reconsider this one. I think you ought to put it back on the agenda at a future meeting and bring it up. You know, I want to be proud of you guys. I don't want to be ashamed of you. I want to tell my friends who don't live in California anymore, who say, oh, California's lost, they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I want to say, no, they're doing good. Look at, they're standing up against laws that are bad. Anyway, I'm praying for you guys every morning and every night to seek wisdom, ask God for help. So I hope you all do the right thing. God bless.
Thank you, John. Next up is Michael T.
Thank you, Mayor. Council members, council staff, pardon the hat. In lieu of what this fine gentleman just spoke of, I thought I'd be the only one here that might be mentioning what's going on with the situation with the high schools, and I quite a bit to say about that. Before I do that, though, I didn't know we were going to talk about Arbor Day. I'm going to give you one of my favorite quotes by John Muir. He says, "Trees are poems that the earth writes into the sky." And I've been leading nature hikes here for 40 years. 5-year-old Daisy Girl Scouts, my favorite, uncorrupted. Empowerment programs from Charmley Park, Hess Kramer, Camp Shalom, Sycamore Canyon. In fact, Mr. Engel and one of his organizations collaborated with one of my organizations for over 2 decades, taking disabled veterans into Sycamore Canyon for nature immersion programs, one of the greatest therapeutic modalities. As a combat disabled veteran, I took an oath in 1982. That oath still applies. I love Thousand Oaks. I love Ventura County. I love California. I love the United States of America enough to take that oath, to jump out of airplanes and helicopters, fully strapped, ready to protect and defend the Constitution, support and defend the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. That oath still stands. I'm here as an iceberg representing a huge contingent of veterans who are being abandoned, disabled veterans, homeless veterans. For 15 years, I was a tent leader and finally a tent captain at the Ventura County Stand Down, a homeless veteran program that served Ventura County veterans. You sleep in a tent with 15, 16 disabled veterans representing 34 services that they are entitled to. The biggest travesty of our last event, we needed 2 tents, gentlemen, ladies, for homeless female veterans and their children. Let me say that again. Homeless female veterans and their children have honorably served. Arguably the most vulnerable. And where's our ally? This is about misappropriation of funds regarding these bathrooms and the psychopathy, not the psychology. We need to treat the psychology. Our homeless veterans, these are mental health issues. This gender affirming, the conflicts these kids and their parents, these are mental health issues. Let's bring it back to the psychology, not the psychopathy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jim.
My name is Jim Ruddy. I'm about a 30-year resident of Thousand Oaks. Just want to really quickly affirm what the last two spoke to. And that is, I think one of the groups that has been missed here are the children, asking them how they would feel about this. And I'm going to tell you, having had 3 gone through the schools here all the way through and graduated, multiple grandchildren, I haven't seen one of them that is in favor of this action. And I think we're missing that key right there. A lot of them are just darn well not comfortable with, sorry to say it, for whatever reason, with the opposite sex in that same bathroom with them. There is a sense of privacy. You might want to call it being prude. I would dare say that's not the issue. I would dare say it's their right to privacy that is maybe being infringed upon, and that can be reconsidered. I'm going to leave it at that and would just say that there are numbers out there that have not been addressed in terms of their concerns regarding this. I think it's time to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Josh Gray.
Thank you, Mayor Adam and council members. My name is Josh Gray, and I'm the Director of Government Affairs and Tourism for the Greater Conejo Valley Chamber of Commerce, here with a few updates from your chamber. Last Friday, the Chamber held its Spotlight Breakfast series focused on civic leaders. I want to thank Mayor Adam again for participating in our panel. The Chamber's next Legislative Roundtable is on April 23rd at 8 a.m. with the topic focused on our new workplace violence prevention legislation from the state, SB 553. Last month, the Leadership Conejo class spent the day with Ventura County Sheriff's Department, speaking with deputies and visiting Todd Road Jail. Next Friday, the class will be touring Conejo Rec and Parks, followed by their graduation in May. On May 17th, we're hosting our recognition gala at Walnut Grove in Moore Park. We'll be recognizing our amazing award honorees, including UCLA Health as Business of the Year, Tom Cohen as Man of the Year, Andrea Gallagher as Woman of the Year, and Many Mansions as Nonprofit of the Year. You can register for all these events and more on the Chamber website through our events calendar. Then on the tourism front, the Tourism District recently released our 2023 annual report. A couple of key stats I want to pull out for you. Our district outperformed the average occupancy rate for Ventura County Coast, LA County, and California itself. Our district outperformed the average daily rate and RevPAR for Ventura County Coast. 9.9 million impressions on Facebook were made. That is up 39% from 2022. And we hosted 11 influencer familiarization trips, resulting in more than 81,000 engagements on social media. And our average email open rate was 42%, which is sky high compared to the rest of the industry. For Q1 for the tourism district, it's been busy. We've had 5 influencers that have already highlighted our foodie, hiking, horseback riding, family fun destination and events in the region on TikTok, Instagram, as well as a great blog promoting the Conejo Valley. We also have 2 more influencers booked this month, one focused on wedding-related spaces in the region, and then the Great Race and trails in the area. I also wanted to note for you all that the TID conducts an independent audit once every 2 years, and we'll be doing one this year for last year's financials. And finally, I just want to say we appreciate this very important partnership to support our hotel partners and local businesses through increased tourism. I'm available for any questions. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Josh, and congratulations to all those being recognized by the Greater Conejo Valley Chamber of Commerce. I think it's a very prestigious honor.
Very
Glad that you do
prestigious.
that every
And
year.
see you all May 17th. Thank you.
I'll be there. Mr. Powers.
Thanks. Just want to give kudos to our Chamber and Tourism District. Really, the numbers are bearing out how much hard work has gone into our efforts to increase tourism here locally, and that does pay dividends through transit occupancy tax. In regards to the other speakers that were referencing school district restrooms, back in January, the council provided its annual adherence to the terms of the TOPAS agreement. TOPAS was established in 1984. It stands for Thousand Oaks Plan to Assist School Sites. It's a holdover from redevelopment era. And in redevelopment law, when redevelopment went away, the rollout of that, the county distributes some money that, per the terms of that agreement, they go directly to the school district. Per terms of that agreement, every year, the school district simply sends over a list of projects, capital projects that they intend to use the funds for, and the council adopted that per the terms of the agreement. So we don't select projects, we're not part of the projects, so any questions specific to the projects would be best directed over to that entity. That's it.
Mayor, I have a question for the city manager.
Mr.
if I may.
McNamee, yes.
Thank you, sir. Do we have the flexibility here at the council? If we don't like a project, we can line item, or does all projects need to be approved as presented by the school board to us for funding?
My understanding is that per the terms of the agreement, we're simply adhering to the project list, which the agreement indicates the project spent on capital at the school district. The council, since '84, has put, through this tax increment, has put forward millions of dollars that have gone towards various programs. These are not discretionary dollars. These are dollars that are holdovers from tax increment of RDA.
So we basically don't have the discretion here at the council to line item projects we may or may not like, and as a result, we're just simply a pass-through. Is that correct?
That's correct. And now, in this era, the money doesn't even pass through. The money generates straight from the county of Ventura to the school district directly. And so this is the adherence to the terms of that, which is the projects list.
My question is, what is our purpose? But we can discuss that behind the scenes and move forward with that discussion at some point. Thank you.
Well, and I just to codify, it is the adherence to the agreement, right? So that agreement was established, and to ensure those terms are correct, that is your kind of responsibility in that regard. So,
thank you.
All right. Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Powers. Consent calendar. Anything to pull? All right. Then looking for a motion.
I'd move the consent calendar.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Engler. If you call for the vote, please.
Councilmember Engler?
Yes.
Councilmember McNamee?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newman?
Aye.
And Mayor Adam?
Yes.
And that motion passes 5-0. And I do have an ordinance title to read. An ordinance amending Thousand Oaks Municipal Code relating to official zoning map by changing zoning classification at property located at 400 East Rolling Oaks and 355 West Jans Road. Zone change 2022-70733-Z.
All right. Thank you, Ms. McGuire. And now we have a public hearing. If you to announce that for us, please, Ms. McGuire.
Hearing advertised as required by law is open to consider agenda item number 10A, Municipal Code amendments regarding emergency shelters and large family daycare homes. There are no speakers for this item.
Thank you. Mr. Nazar Slim, our senior planner, will be our presenter this evening. Good evening, Mr. Slim.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council, the public. The presentation before you is a request to adopt municipal code amendments affecting planning and zoning codes for family daycare and emergency shelters. The request is as follows. Consider adopting amendment of Thousand Oaks Municipal Code, Chapter 4 of Title 9, as listed below. updating Article 2, definitions related to large and small family daycare within residential uses, as well as other family daycare-related sections that aim at facilitate an increase in supply of licensed family child care homes in the state. Secondly, updating Article 2, definitions relating to emergency shelters and other related sections. There's a background section. The city's zoning code requires updates to reflect current state laws, community trends, and the visions and policies of the general plan. On September 26, 2023, City Council initiated MCAs 2023-7003 through 7008, to consider adopting new language inclusive of development standards and permitting for various code sections. The presentation tonight will focus on MCA 2023-7007 and 7008. The background section. On February 12, 2024, the Planning Commission held a public hearing, received a staff report, a presentation from staff, and public testimony to consider the proposed amendments. This discussion is related to the large family daycare. 2019, SB 234 was passed. It was passed to address the statewide shortage of regulated childcare. The law requires local ordinances to treat large family daycare homes the same as small family daycare homes, which is an allowed use in residential zones, an allowed residential use. The proposed revisions to the Thousand Oaks Municipal Code will modify the existing and/or provide new definitions to comply with the state code that was introduced by SB 234. It'll also change the permitted use matrix in Chapter 4 of Title IX to ensure both large family daycares and small family daycares are allowed by right in residential zones. To comply with SB 234, the proposed ordinance will add updated definitions for family daycare as follows. The new definition will act more like an umbrella definition, which will cover family daycare homes in general. That includes both large and small family daycares. And there's going to be a limit of up to 14 children at a time. That would constitute a family daycare home. The amended definition will call out the specific large family daycare limitation of 7 to 14 children. And the other amended definition will call out the specifics to a small family daycare home, which would be up to eight children. Lastly, there would be an amended definition to include both small family daycare homes and large family daycare homes within a dwelling unit. And this definition just further explains what a dwelling unit is, and it will cover everything from single-family residences to a unit in a multifamily dwelling complex. This section here just discusses real quickly on the Planning Commission review and recommendation. When presented, this was unanimously recommended that City Council approve the amendments as presented. This discussion relates to emergency shelters. It's widely known providing shelter for unhoused people has been a challenge throughout the state. Emergency shelters are offered, but they are limited to 6 months. On January 12, 2024, City Council approved the Low Barrier Navigation Center to assist people in transitioning into permanent housing. Currently, Thousand Oaks Municipal Code does limit the time of stay for individuals to 6 months. This limitation does propose some challenges to the efforts brought forth by these low barrier navigation centers. The code amendment will establish a definition for low barrier navigation center, which does not limit the length of time a person can remain in the shelter. Also allows flexibility in moving persons to permanent housing and instituting self-sufficiency through case management. Planning Commission review and recommendation. The commissioners raised concern about removing the reference to maximum stay from the current emergency shelter definition, Reason being that it would be inconsistent with the state code or state definition. However, they did recommend including a low barrier navigation center as a type of emergency shelter with no statutory limitation on length of stay. Therefore, a new definition is being presented within the emergency shelter section. It is a low barrier navigation center, just states that it is a type of emergency shelter. And this definition that's also included in the packet, in the staff report, closely resembles the state definition, with exception to the fact that it clarifies it is a type of emergency shelter. This is just a continuation of that, and it discusses the standards again that is consistent with the state regulation. And this is an amendment to the existing emergency shelter definition. And the only amendment here is that it provides that exception that excludes low barrier navigation centers from the 6-month limitation. And further, another amendment to a definition that's existing. This is a section that explains the standards for emergency shelters, and it is item number 11. Again, just accepting or leaving out low barrier navigation centers for, again, length of stay. In conclusion, the proposed code amendments are consistent with the general plan. They will not be detrimental to public interests, health, safety, convenience, or welfare of the city. And the purpose of the amendments is to update the Thousand Oaks Municipal Code to comply with new legal requirements and best practices. Therefore, staff recommendation would be that to find that approving the municipal code amendments for changes to the city's zoning code is an action exempt from CEQA, and to read ordinance in title only, further reading be waived, and if no objection, introduce ordinance to amend Thousand Oaks Municipal Code sections 9-4.202 and 9-4.2104 related to residential large family daycare in compliance with changes enacted under Senate Bill 234. That's MCA 2023-70007. Also, read ordinance in title only, further reading be waived, and if no objection, introduce ordinance to amend Thousand Oaks Municipal Code, section 9-4.202, related to definitions of emergency shelters in compliance with changes enacted under state law, MCA 2023-70008. That concludes the presentation. Staff is available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Slim. Questions for staff? Mr. Engler?
Yes, having to do with the daycare centers within the residential. The definitions are very similar in the code. In other words, they're almost treated exactly the same. So why haven't we combined them? Is there a reason to keep those separate, or just is it better to combine them?
One thought behind distinguishing between the small, are we talking about distinguishing between small and large? Distinguishing
between the small and the large.
Yes, the reason to do that was to be consistent with state law. Currently, this action dictates that local jurisdictions cannot distinguish between the two. In other words, they will both be allowed by right as a normal residential use without any need for a special permit, taxes, or licenses. However, the State Department of Social Services will continue to regulate both small and small and large daycare centers as different types of operations. The licensure for a small daycare center will continue to be different than a large daycare center. Hence, the idea was to have those definitions in our code, so to simplify the distinction so that we can cross-reference with the state at some point if we need to.
Thank you. And then one other question. This is in residential areas, applies to single-family residences and other. Can you kind of go through all the types of residences? And I'm particularly concerned with perhaps ADUs that might serve as daycare as well.
That is true. So basically, any dwelling unit that's classified as a dwelling unit, and that can come in different forms, anything ranging from a detached single-family residence, to a duplex on through a multifamily development, Could be a studio, could be a one, kind of unlikely it would be a studio, but my point is it could be a one-bedroom apartment. They would be allowed to run perhaps a small family daycare out of that. As far as ADUs, if that constitutes a dwelling unit, that is potential that they can do that as well. A one-bedroom ADU, for instance, or a two-bedroom ADU.
And is there a requirement for the resident to be there, or is it going to be just a rental?
No, sir, it does have to be, the person that resides in the dwelling unit will be the operator. So, yeah, typically. So that could be a renter as well.
Sure.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Just a quick one. Do you think in any way lifting the 6-month limit, so to speak, will impede the transitional nature of what these low barrier navigation centers are supposed to be?
Well, the idea in lifting it was not to impede, but rather to enhance the efforts from the low barrier navigation centers. Reason being is, we've had some people talk about, homeless veterans, et cetera, and it was brought up there is a psychological component to that. Given that's the case, caseworkers work individually with these people, so there may be more work needed with some individuals than others. That work may exceed what you can do within a 6-month period, and that was the reason to lift that, to enable those people to get the assistance and support to carry them into I guess, a better, state. So that was the reason to remove that 6-month limitation.
Yeah, I like what you said, not impede, but in fact enhance. Okay,
Correct.
I could see 6 months does sound a little rigid. It could be in some cases. It's just that, to me, the transitional nature of these facilities is really important because there needs to be a flow through, because there'll be other people behind that want to come in. And of course, the main goal is to come up with some kind of permanent housing solution. But I guess having a little more flexibility would be a plus as far as duration of stay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah, just to be clear, too, the emergency shelters will retain that 6-month limitation because those are distinguished separately from the low barrier navigation centers.
That makes sense to me. Let us see. Do we have public speakers? No public speakers. Staff, any further questions for staff? And any more comments? And if not, I'll close the public hearing. Got that? There you go. And open it up to discussion and/or motion. Mr. Taylor.
I have no discussion, but I can move if we are finished with it.
All right.
I'll move, where are we? 10A. What do I need? Do I need to include CEQA on this one? Based on the recommendation of staff.
10A and all the staff recommendations that go with it, yeah. Okay, that sounds good. We have a motion on the floor.
Councilmember Engler?
Yes.
Councilmember McNamee?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newman?
Aye.
Mayor Adam?
Yes.
And that motion passes 5-0. Excuse me, and I have 2 ordinance titles to read. Ordinance amending Thousand Oaks Municipal Code, Title 9, Chapter 4, Article 2, to redefine terms small and large family daycare homes, MCA-2023-70007. And an ordinance amending Thousand Oaks Municipal Code, Title 9, Chapter 4, Article 2, by introducing definition for low barrier navigation center and exemption to related time reference of 6 months that unhoused person can remain in emergency shelter, MCA-2023-70008.
Thank you very much. And we have a study session on our climate and environmental action plan. Dr. Cox will be presenting. I'm sure Dr. Cox is happy that we've gotten to this point. It's been a bit of a journey, hasn't it?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Council. I'm here this evening to talk about our Climate and Environmental Action Plan, or CEAP, and I'm joined on the dais by Public Works Director Cliff Finley and Senior Analyst John Brooks. Just a quick reminder on why climate action is necessary. In August 2021, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, released its most comprehensive assessment of climate change to date. The IPCC, a body of the United Nations, comprises an international panel of over 200 scientists who've reviewed and assessed the findings from 14,000 scientific publications on climate change. Their assessment states in no uncertain terms that human-caused emissions of greenhouse gases, or GHGs, are the primary cause of climate change, and that we are running out of time to meet the goal of limiting warming, such as to avoid its most catastrophic impacts. The planet is warmer now than it has been in over 2,000 years, and the changes that we see cannot be accounted for through natural variations. Some of the more significant impacts are shown here. They are no longer a long way off or a long way away. They're here in the county right now. Impacts are not just on the environment, but also on the economy. For example, quoting from an assessment by insurance giant Swiss Re, the New York Times has warned that climate change could cut world economy by $23 trillion by 2050. The state carries out regular assessments of the projected effects of climate change in California. The projections of temperature increase that you see here are from the state's most recent assessment, carried out in 2018, and show expected increases in daily maximum temperature by the end of this century to be 5.5 to almost 9 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the action that we take to reduce emissions. The impacts of these are most severe for our vulnerable populations. Another important impact of climate change to the city is the anticipated reduction in the Sierra snowpack, which is projected to decline by 2/3 by the end of this century. We rely almost exclusively on that snowpack for our local water supply, and are working hard with our neighboring water suppliers to develop collaborative regional solutions, while also trying to reduce demand. You will see some of these initiatives in the draft CEAP. We are fortunate to live in a state that is a global leader in tackling climate change. A series of greenhouse gas reduction targets have been set by the state, starting with AB 32 in 2006. The current targets call for a 40% reduction in emissions by 2030 and 85% reduction by 2045, relative to 1990 levels. The state's scoping plan lays out the path for achieving these targets. I wanted to do just a brief recap of how the city got to this point. In 2014, development of a climate action plan was among the city's top 10 priorities that emerged from the citywide year-long Visioning 2064 process. The city started by looking internally at its own operations, and then beginning in 2021, Council set the development of a community climate action plan among its top 10 priorities. In early 2021, City Council established preliminary greenhouse gas reduction targets for the plan, and we held a series of workshops to discuss possible strategies with an appointed 21-member stakeholder group that broadly represented the community. These strategies were presented to Council for feedback in fall 2021. There was a hiatus in CEAP activity in 2022 due to other priorities, namely the solid waste transition and then the drought, and work on the CEAP resumed in 2023 when we developed the first draft of the plan and conducted outreach at Arbor Earth Day. For the remainder of 2023, this work was put on hold to allow the community to focus on review of the general plan and its environmental impact report. Following adoption of the general plan in December 2023, we finalized the CEAP draft and worked with Rincon Consultants on the CEQA document. This delay has allowed us to incorporate the land use map and growth assumptions from the general plan into our analysis and ensure that the CEAP addresses policies laid out in the general plan. The development of a climate action plan was one of Council's top priorities for this fiscal year as it had been for the prior 2 years. So we are pleased indeed to be at this point. The draft CAP and CEQA document, an initial study negative declaration, or ISND, were released for public review 2 weeks ago on March the 18th. We are now in the public comment period with an April 23rd deadline for submission of comments. This is the fourth public presentation of the draft CAP since it's released and presents an opportunity for both council and public feedback. The purpose of this evening's study session is to be available to answer council questions regarding the CAP, address any concerns, get feedback, and take direction with a goal of coming back on May the 7th to council to adopt a final plan. The CAP is organized into two parts, a main part containing the sections listed here, and a second part containing the technical appendices. The best way for the public to view the plan and provide feedback is through our dedicated website at toclimateaction.org. The documents can be downloaded from this website, and the site itself presents a means to get a quick overview of all the measures contained in the plan. I'll now dive into the plan itself. Our GHG reduction targets are shown here. They are aligned with the state's, but correct for the city's 2010 baseline year, which is the furthest back in time for which we have reliable and complete data. The state used a 1990 baseline. Here you can see the breakdown of our emissions. Transportation is the largest sector at 63%, followed by natural gas at 21%, after which are electricity at 6% and smaller sectors like solid waste and water. Since 2010, community emissions have fallen by about 27%. The main driver of these reductions has been enrollment in Clean Power Alliance starting in 2019, which brought carbon-free electricity to the community. Some emission reductions in the electricity sector have also resulted from the overall greening of the electrical grid, and in the transportation sector from improved vehicle fuel efficiency, as mandated by the California Advanced Clean Cars program. In 2019, the community started to receive electricity supplied by Clean Power Alliance, a nonprofit joint powers authority, or JPA, consisting of 35 cities across LA and Ventura counties, as well as the unincorporated areas of both counties. CPA offers 3 different renewable energy program options shown here on the left. Council selected 100% renewable electricity as the default supply, and community participation at this level has remained high at over 80%. For those choosing to remain with SCE, the electric grid is slowly greening according to the Renewables Portfolio Standard, or RPS, as shown on the right. So an increasing proportion of their electricity will come from renewable resources over time. By 2045, the electric grid serving California will be 100% carbon-free. It's important to note that the availability of zero-emissions clean electricity across the community makes shifting energy use from natural gas or other fossil fuels to electricity the most impactful way of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Projected emissions are shown here in a business-as-usual scenario, i.e. one in the absence of a climate action plan. These projections include state regulations and standards as of 2021 regarding vehicle fuel efficiency mandates and emissions modeling, building codes, and the RPS standards for the greening of the electric grid. The projections utilize the vehicle miles modeling conducted for the general plan land use map and projected growth under the city's general plan. This shows that even with growth in the city, emissions will continue to fall, reaching a 36% reduction by 2030 and 41% by 2045. These reductions, however, fall short of our targets, hence the need for a local climate action plan. The plan is organized into 6 focus areas as shown here. The first 4, building energy, transportation, solid waste, and water have measures designed specifically to reduce GHG emissions. An environmental section addresses quality of life issues such as noise, health, and air pollution. And the sixth focus area, adaptation and resilience, includes measures to address the existing and anticipated local impacts of climate change. Goals have been established within each of these focus areas, and for each goal, there are multiple measures listed. Each measure includes a proposed starting date, the estimated reduction in GHG emissions associated with its successful implementation, and a number of steps or actions necessary to implement the measure. In a minute, we'll dive into examples of some of these goals and measures, but first, we'll take a look at where successful implementation of the measures in the plan will get us. As you can see from the chart, there are improved projected GHG emissions. These projections are again based on existing state mandates, but also include implementation of the CAP measures and increased adoption of electric vehicles, consistent with the local vehicle turnover rate and California's 2035 zero-emission vehicle sales mandate. As you can see, the resulting transportation footprint is reduced, and an overall 42% reduction in GHG emissions by 2030 is projected, which will meet our target. Projections show a 59% reduction by 2045, which still falls short of ours and the state's 85% reduction target. I would note that the reductions shown here are likely conservative in that they do not include those from measures where quantification and verification is not possible, such as outreach and education. This is the city's first climate action plan and greenhouse gas inventory reporting and represents a starting point for action. The CAP will be revisited every 5 years, providing an opportunity to update projections and strategies in the light of expected new state legislation, regulations, and building codes, and informed by tracking data from annual emissions and key performance indicators. There are 62 measures in the CAP. I'll now highlight just a few. Here is one from the building energy area of the plan. As I mentioned previously, switching from natural gas to electric power will reduce GHG emissions. We will not mandate that new buildings be all electric, but would allow builders to construct mixed fuel buildings. If they choose this option, they would need to add energy efficiency or electrification measures that meet the equivalent GHG savings through selection from a menu. This is known as the Flexible Measures Compliance Pathway. Under existing building code, since builders are already required to make homes electric ready, they can save costs by installing electric heating equipment and appliances rather than natural gas. So we expect going all electric to be the preferred route. Note that the electrification of new buildings is already happening voluntarily by developers in the city. Several recent projects have chosen to go all electric, including, but not limited to, Tio Ranch, the Baxter site, and Hillcrest Affordable Housing. The Flexible Measures Compliance Path proposed for mixed fuel buildings and mentioned in the previous slide has been developed by the California Energy Codes and Standards team. It allows us to customize an emissions reduction target based on the size and scope of the project. We propose to use the same method for achieving emissions reductions from existing buildings that are undergoing major renovations or additions. A second goal under the building energy area is to reduce emissions from existing buildings and operations. There are a host of programs, rebates, and incentives available to residents for energy efficiency improvements and electrification of homes, but these are hard to access and navigate. Under the proposed Energy Ambassador program, we will provide one-on-one assistance to community residents and property owners on accessing and applying for these programs, beginning with low-income and multifamily properties. In concert with this outreach, we're planning to deploy an online interactive web tool that will provide customized assistance on cost, benefit, and resources for potential property improvements, and allow users to develop a customized plan of action. Another measure under this goal would be to reduce energy use in city operations through a transition to LED streetlights throughout the city. This will be conducted with careful consideration of our residents on the look and feel of the city. In transportation, there are two principal goals. One is to reduce vehicle miles driven, and the other is to transition to zero-emission vehicles. The general plan identifies multiple smart growth policies, such as developing a downtown corridor with a mixture of residential and commercial uses so that people can live, shop, and recreate without having to drive. New growth under the general plan will be denser and more walkable, reducing driving miles. One of the functions of the CAP will be to implement support for smart growth, such as updating and implementing the active transportation plan, constructing additional sidewalks, integrating support for e-mobility, and pursuing viable transit options. The other goal of the transportation section is to increase the proportion of clean or electric vehicles in the city. A number of measures are geared towards aiding and accelerating this transition. Whereas residents of single-family homes can easily charge electric vehicles at home, it is much more of a challenge for those in apartment complexes. We plan to help provide charging opportunities for folk living in multifamily complexes, both existing ones and new ones. The existing building code requirements for new multifamily developments do not go far enough, requiring only 35% of spaces to be EV capable or EV ready. We propose to increase this requirement by moving to a Tier 1 or Tier 2 Cal Green requirement rather than the basic level, or adopting our own standard. Many existing multifamily properties are difficult to retrofit for electric vehicle charging. The city proposes to help residents of those properties by providing affordable, fast charging in convenient locations throughout the city. And the $6 million of grant funding that we received this year will be used for that purpose. In solid waste, measures include the reduction of organic waste through separate collection and composting of that waste stream, which began in 2022. A new measure is the proposed addition of a food recovery storage facility to support our local food recovery organizations that collect food from generators like supermarkets and restaurants and deliver it to those in need. As mentioned at the start of the presentation, we expect a declining snowpack in the future and so need to continue to focus on reducing water use, particularly outdoors, which comprises about 70% of use. Climate-appropriate landscaping saves water, provides habitat, and attracts pollinators, thus bringing multiple benefits. While we would encourage on-site reuse of gray water as a viable, local, non-potable water source, we recognize that there are significant upfront and ongoing maintenance and operation costs associated with such systems. They are most cost-effective when designed into new multifamily or mixed-use developments. One of the environmental measures proposed is the phase-out of gas-powered leaf blowers in the city. These cause air and noise pollution, produce GHG emissions, and negatively impact human health and quality of life. In a single hour of use, a gas-powered leaf blower emits more smog-forming pollution than driving a new passenger car 1,000 miles. There are many cost-effective electric alternatives readily available. Accountability and transparency are very important to a successful plan implementation. We've identified key performance indicators which we'll track and report on through a public-facing dashboard. In addition, we plan to report emissions annually through the CDP, the world's largest emissions reporting platform. We encourage the public to review the plan and provide feedback through the dedicated website, toclimateaction.org. Again, this is our first climate action plan and our first complete greenhouse gas inventory report, which we'll extend back to 2010. It establishes a baseline for us, a tracking mechanism, and a plan of action. The CAP's a living document that will be updated as we work to implement it and learn as we go along. The purpose of tonight is to set that process in motion. Thank you for your attention. We're looking for feedback and direction and are here to answer your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Cox, and thank you for your dedication over the years to put together this plan. Questions? Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mayor. And I, too, want to add my thanks, Dr. Cox, to you in particular. We're lucky to have a climate scientist of your caliber, and to the entire team that worked on this. I know it's an enormous effort, and I'm very glad to see our city taking a leading role in addressing our climate crisis. So thank you. In terms of the questions I have, well, one more thanks. Thank you for proposing the ban on gas-powered leaf blowers. I think you would find somewhere near 100.00% agreement with residents, not only on climate grounds, but on noise pollution grounds as well. I wonder on that particular item if the city has already identified incentives or will be looking for incentives to help landscaping companies convert over to electric appliances.
Yes, we've been in contact with the Ventura County Air Pollution Control District and have been waiting for them to put out some incentives or rebates. And we just heard from them yesterday, actually, that they have developed a plan. And in the next couple of months, they're intending to roll out that incentive program. And it's a very comprehensive program, actually. The program would cover 100% of the total purchase cost of any new emissions, zero emissions landscaping equipment. So both leaf blowers, chainsaws, trimmers, edges, brush cutters, all of those things. And charging device, 2 batteries, taxes, fees, everything paid for, as long as you trade in a piece of gas equipment. So they will provide vouchers per commercial applicant up to $50,000 and per resident up to $4,000. And so as soon as that program is rolled out, we plan to send letters to every landscaping company that's registered in our business license system to let them know about that and encourage them to apply.
Excellent. Thank you. With regard to some of the enforcement mechanisms, there's a general theme throughout the plan that stresses the importance of education, of carrots over sticks. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. We know from our education and outreach efforts in other areas, such as housing affordability or homelessness, that we have brought residents who have formerly been reluctant around, and I think that can happen here. But I also recognize that at this point, as you said, this is a plan. It's not an ordinance. It's not a set of requirements. So I'm wondering, while I'm all for carrots on the stick side, what sort of enforcement mechanisms are we contemplating to ensure that all these excellent ideas that are contained in the plan are carried out?
Well, some of them are going to be through the building permit process, obviously, those ones. If you're talking about leaf blowers, certainly our emphasis would be on education up front, absolutely no question. So we would start by sending letters to those entities that are registered, and then follow that up. So if we get a complaint and we have information, then we would send a letter. That's our usual process. Enforcement in the field is difficult and resource intensive, so we always prefer to go by the education route. And that's the same mechanism that we use, for example, for the single-use disposable ban was the same thing. We contacted all the retailers in the city, and we've been very successful with that.
Very good. And then my final question for now is on the area of overall GHG reductions. It is a stark contrast between the business as usual chart and the CAP chart. There are great improvements for that. But I'm concerned that to be frank, we're still not hitting our targets. And particularly given what a large slice of that transportation is, I'm concerned, while I'm all for EVs and while I voted for multifamily housing that has EV chargers and all that, I'm concerned that we're not reducing that amount of GHG emissions aggressively enough. So my question on this is, if during these periodic reviews it turns out that we're really not hitting our targets, we're not even getting to the 59% reduction, let alone 85%, what more can we do on that?
Well, I think to some extent we're leaning to the state and federal governments to take more action if that's the case. They have their own targets to try to achieve, and we're basically aligning with those. So I would say that if it turns out that, you know, by 2030 or when it's next reviewed, the state will need to roll out additional programs themselves, and it's probably going to be looking at emissions from natural gas, perhaps in existing buildings, because that's a big chunk of it. But that's really where we will be looking to.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, natural gas emissions may actually increase slightly over time.
So Mr. Finley has.
Mr. Finley.
Just to add a comment there on the transportation sector. You know, we're as far as your large vehicles, which make up a majority of the GHG emissions, the technology is coming, and so we are hopeful and rest assured. I believe the technology will get there to make some big reductions as time goes on.
I'm encouraged to hear that. Thank you. I have some suggestions, but no additional questions. This is a study session, so maybe I'll leave that for later on.
And if I may just add on to what Mr. Finley was saying, just to remind the council and the public, we've talked, speaking of those large vehicles, when we talk about the technology is coming, we've been out a couple of times to try to secure electric buses over the course of the last year. Those that watch the council closely will know that. And we're one of the few agencies that's done that. Unfortunately, the marketplace hasn't been able to deliver those yet. So when we talk about that technology is coming, those are the pieces we're really out there on that bleeding edge trying to secure those things, because those are the areas going to make an impact. Industry-wise, it's just that hasn't quite aligned, but it is getting very close.
All right, thank you again for the presentation. My first question is on the water side. We talked about still needing to reserve water, which I totally agree. My question is, we've had two really good years as far as rain. Can you talk about conversations around water harvesting, or even something like a desalination plan or deep sea desalination? Is there anything happening on the county level, or is that at all going to be part of this plan?
So it's not specifically part of this plan, but there is work happening countywide, cooperation amongst all the water agencies to look for regional, local water supplies, which might include desalters, ocean water desalination, as well as utilization of groundwater and reuse of wastewater. You know, there's a lot of options out there as the future moves forward.
Okay. On the, I believe it was called the Energy Ambassador Program. Is that what it's called? Can you walk me through that? Am I correct to assume, or maybe if I heard this right, there's going to be someone that we have on city staff or potentially a website that is basically going to show if a building qualifies for, maybe like an energy efficient building, that will line them up with resources for a rebate or some type of alternate financing options where maybe they get, a lower interest rate or something like that?
Correct. So we're accessing all the available utility, state, and federal rebate and incentive programs. We've compiled many pages with links to those, including all the qualification criteria. And the idea would be that we have someone on staff that will be deploying, first doing outreach, and in fact, they already started talking to some of the, for many mansions, for example, as properties, particularly apartment complexes in the city. So sort of starting there and helping them get free assessments, and then along with those assessments come what would qualify for free programs for energy efficiency, solar, EV charging, all of those things for upgrades that they would be entitled to. So that's part of it. And then the other part would be for new developments. As people come in to inquire and go to planning and start looking at that, we would also connect them with all the available resources.
Okay. On the charging side, right now we are recommending, or maybe the baseline is for charging and parking spaces, I believe you said 35% is what we're requiring for new builds. And the recommendation is to move it, if I'm getting this correctly, to a tier 1 or tier 2, so increasing it to potentially 45% or 55%. Can you talk to me about how you guys maybe look at the recommendation to increase parking or energy for parking, maybe charging for parking, versus the added costs for a developer, and how we navigate that in the moment of the housing crisis? Do we look at the impact on building, and do we run the risk that we will see a stall out in projects? Because even though we've entitled, or not technically entitled, zoned all of these new projects, there's no projects yet. Can you walk me through that comparison?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously we're trying to maintain housing affordability, or even to get there with housing affordability. So we're really looking at trying to keep those increased costs down to a minimum. I think with the EVs, the numbers that we got was the average statewide was about $1,300 per parking spot that was converted to an EV-ready or EV-capable parking spot. And although that is, an added cost, the problem is compared to trying to do a retrofit in the future. So maybe there isn't the demand right now, but if you're looking, and assuming that those buildings are going to be here 50 years from now, compared to the cost of retrofits down the road, it's relatively small. Plus, ultimately, as we expect this full transition to electric vehicles by 2035, you're going to expect that a large number of the residents of those properties will want to and need EV charging. So it's sort of an investment in the future, but it would be a somewhat of an added cost up front. There is no question.
Okay. Then my last one real quick. You just mentioned that there's some, I think Drew just mentioned it, some local, or maybe this is even state initiatives providing vouchers to exchange. This is in relation to the gas blowers and for landscape. Providing vouchers to exchange your equipment in. I think you said you could trade in your gas-powered blower in this hypothetical, get an electric one, 2 batteries, charging, and even a potential rebate. I guess my question to you is, if that's here, would you expect that to naturally happen? Would you, why would, if somebody has old equipment, not want to trade in their old equipment for brand new equipment? Is the assumption that that's probably a pretty good deal when those vouchers and rebates come about?
Yeah, but a lot of it's on the outreach and the education. Like, people don't know about these things, so we have to be pretty aggressive in telling people, and it's also sort of a, hey, we're expecting this thing to come. The city's, likely going to put a phase out or ban, apply for this apply for this opportunity while it exists, because I don't know how long the program's going to have resources for at that kind of at the kind of rebates that they're offering. So you might think that it would just happen organically, and maybe it will, but really I think the key is just to do all that outreach and education and get our landscapers operating in the city to apply for those.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. McNamee.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Finley, you know that since 2016, I've been communicating with the city even before I was on council here about water sustainability and reuse. And you know my passion for water and my background in it. I want to drill down a little bit more on Councilmember Taylor's questions, very good questions. One of the models that we've been talking about is that our water comes from the snowpack through Metropolitan Water District and then to the east Ventura County, Thousand Oaks included. And yes, we're dependent on that snowpack, and if we don't have a good snowpack or wind up it evaporating as it did 2 years ago, that we're in a world of hurt. My desire is that we become independent, that we become self-sufficient in reuse. There's 125, I believe, proposals that have been discussed regionally with Gallegos and the drought task force that you and I have served on. One of the models that I've been proponent of is take our wastewater, treat it, put it through reverse osmosis, people may know it as desal, and reuse it again, or take that water, pump it up to Gallegos for reverse osmosis, put it back in Lake Bard, a similar model to what Las Virgenes Water District is doing. To me, that makes the most sense, because bringing in desalinated water from the ocean at $1 million a mile and the energy to pump that water makes it cost prohibitive, whereas this is more local. I'm looking at the interest rate increases that we're seeing in water coming down the road from Metropolitan Water District. Outrageous, but it's happening. The second source is stormwater capture and reuse. And I've talked about at the bottom of Hill Canyon plant where the water flows beside it, then under the 101 freeway out to the ocean. Why are we not capturing it there for treatment? And you and I have talked recently about combined stormwater with the wastewater that we treat at the plant when we have those storms. It's treated, remove the fats, greases, and oils, good place to be. Store it somewhere, as we talked about injecting it into the aquifers and bring it up later. Those are exciting. Based on my numbers and my calculations, we get anywhere between 50 to 60% independent just by wastewater alone reuse from Gallegos and Metropolitan and the snowpack. I'm getting impatient. What will it take to move forward with a real project for both wastewater treatment, reuse, stormwater capture and reuse? What's it going to take to move this forward as a city and a region to make this occur? I'm looking for your guidance here.
Thank you, Councilmember McNamee. As you're well aware, the cost of all those options per acre foot of water delivered is expensive. But as the state starts to increase the cost of imported water, those costs are becoming more similar to a local project. So to answer your question, the local projects won't be long before they would be considered cost effective, and we control the water. We prefer, City of Thousand Oaks prefer to have that be part of a regional solution, since we are going to be utilizing our partners such as Gallegos, potentially Camarosa for groundwater. We in Thousand Oaks don't particularly have good aquifers to store any water in, so we have to depend on our neighbors. We'd also love to share the cost with our neighbors. So ultimately, what we want to do is provide the best value for our residents and for water delivered to their households. And so I think the answer is it's going to come a lot quicker than I thought it was with the recent droughts, the rate increases that are on the horizon, and what the future for water looks like. So it's going to be sooner rather than later.
Okay, I appreciate the optimism. I look forward to it being developed. As you say, it costs for the public about $50 to $100 million to put in what we're talking about for the reverse osmosis. That's what I leave up to Nader, our engineer, to calculate. Yes, it's an investment, but by the time it's built, which 5 to 10 years, 7 to 10 years to build this, if we start now, it'll pencil out in 7 to 10 years. Is that a fair statement?
That's a good estimate.
Okay. That's my first question, Mayor. Second one is for our climate expert. Question for you. 100 years ago was where we saw that hockey stick kind of increase in CO2 in our atmosphere that people always point to in the graph. 150, 125, 200 years ago, what was our CO2 level in our atmosphere?
It was about 280 parts per million.
Can we bring that down into percentages for people like me?
Well, parts per million, so percent is, part per 100, so I have to start moving the decimal point there, but, it's a it's less than 1/100 of a percent, right? It's a very small proportion of the air, but it plays a very large role because of the properties of that molecule.
The reason why I'm asking is that when I was going through my biology courses looking at atmosphere and plant growth and so forth, our atmosphere is 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, 0.7% carbon dioxide, and 0.3% other gases. And we're asking, I'm not clear today, what percent is our atmosphere carbon dioxide? And again, if we convert from parts per million into percentages, that would assist me and perhaps the public also. As the calculator comes out, I'm sorry.
It's like 0.04%.
0.04%. And we're trying to, and how much of a difference is that compared to where it was 150, 200 years ago? So we're dealing with 0.04.
It was about 0.28.
0.28% 100 years ago, 200 years ago?
Right, so it's gone up from 280 to 420.
So 0.28 to 0.40, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if we reduce by 42% our CO2 emission, what kind of impact will that have to bring our atmosphere CO2 down?
Are you talking about over the whole world or here?
Yeah. In other words, I am looking at the numbers of CO2 emissions coming from China and India compared to what we are.
Right.
And I'm wondering if we're wasting our time trying to reduce CO2 emission, because as much as we try to reduce our CO2 emission, I am not seeing it's going to make any type of impact on the atmospheric CO2 other than make us all feel good that we're trying. But unless China and India come in line, which they haven't been and they have no reason to, we're wasting our time here. And yes, it would be nice to reduce the CO2 emission, but unless we have the cooperation and you tell me reducing our CO2 emissions by 42% by a certain date certain, how much is that going to impact our world atmosphere? That's my observation. What are your thoughts on that?
So once the CO2 is in the atmosphere, it's going to stay there for a long time. So even if we reduce our emissions considerably in the immediate future, the impacts of climate change, the impacts of the emissions that have been put out over the last 100 years are going to stay there for another 100 years. So it isn't really going to be until the end of the century that we start to turn things around. But if we don't, and we carry on increasing the amount of CO2 in the future, the temperature is just going to go up and up and up again into several hundred years into the future. So that's why we need to start making changes now, because it is kind of a long timeline thing. You make the changes now, but the concentration in the atmosphere isn't going to go down immediately. It's going to take a long time to go down.
Let me come back to the premise of my question. Perhaps I wasn't clear. We do our share here in Thousand Oaks as we're projecting 42% reduction. It will not change the percent overall atmosphere around the world unless, of course, China and India do their share, which they are not doing because they're not compelled by the Paris Climate Accord to do so until date certain out, 2050, something like that. and even then, they don't have to comply. Why should we even try here to reduce CO2 emissions if it's not going to affect China and India reducing their CO2 emissions? Explain to me why we should even be doing this, because they're the big dog in this fight, and we're just a little city here. Explain this to me.
So China and India are part of the international agreement on climate change, so they will also be reducing their emissions. In fact, China is building renewable energy plants at a higher rate than anybody else in the world, and they're also producing more electric vehicles, and they have a higher adoption rate of EVs than anybody else in the rest of the world. So as far as reducing their emissions, I would say that, yes, they still have coal-fired power plants, but they're also moving faster than anybody else on adopting new technologies. And if we don't start adopting them here, that they already dominate the world market, you know, with battery energy storage and things like that. We're falling behind. So we have an economic interest in doing this also, not just from an environmental perspective. So I would say that they are doing their part, for sure, and that we have an interest in doing our part. Though you're right in the sense that, you know, what emissions impact on the entire world does the city make? But after all, the world is just comprised of thousands of individuals, of individual cities and states, etc. So it's sort of everybody doing their part.
I appreciate the effort. I think it's futile unless we get China and India on board, and that's where emphasis should be. And there's nothing compelling them because they're not part of the Paris Climate Accord to do so. They've agreed to it, but at a certain date, they will start reducing. And like I say, it's a nice effort on our part. I really don't think it's going to make much of an impact, but time will tell, and it may even actually be after I leave this earth and see what happens. Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate it. Mayor?
Thank you. Mr. Engler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions and comments. Along the same lines as esteemed council member Newman, on the small gas engine apparatus, I'm relieved to know that there are rebates and everything. Similar to our plastics, single-use plastics ban, do we need ordinances to implement that? And because I think the more we get on these things, the better it'll be to move these things forward. Would there be ordinances coming to us on that, or how does that go?
Yes, there's a lot of measures in the plan that will require ordinance updates. The building code, that'll be an ordinance change for the electric vehicle charging that we're proposing, and for the energy measures for buildings. Those will be ordinance changes. For the landscape equipment and for some of the landscaping changes that we're recommending, those would also be through ordinance changes, through the landscape ordinance. Not every measure in the plan requires an ordinance change, but there probably would be half a dozen or so.
Okay. Yeah, the sooner we can get on that, the better. I get information from citizens who are interested in that particular item to go forward. So in terms of what we're doing with our land use, our approach to having mixed use and higher densities along the boulevard and along the 101 corridor, have you been able to quantify the result of that via VMT, or how do we know that that's a good approach?
I don't know if that's something that we have. We have Kristen Rice from the general plan team, but I don't know that. What I can say is that about the VMT analysis, so we took the VMT analysis directly from the general plan, the same analysis that was conducted for the general plan, and that's what we used in this analysis of our emissions. So we didn't do analysis of before and after. We didn't do, well, what is it now and what would it be under the general plan? We just did an analysis of what the VMT is projected to be under the general plan land use map. So that's the data that we use to project our emissions.
Okay, that's, I know that we're thinking that is a good way for us to proceed with our land use. I would be hopeful that we would be able to get some of that to substantiate that approach going forward. In terms of the built structures already, have you given any thought? I know when I was in the fire service, we had a similar approach when there was a mandate from the state to go to fire sprinklers in residential. We came up with I think it was a 50% mark. Anything, remodel more than 50% would require sprinklers. Or we had a dollar amount as well. Have you been able to give any more thoughts to how you would approach the built environment?
No, not specifically what those thresholds would be. I think you're talking about like what the threshold would be if someone comes in for renovation, that they would have to take up, do additional measures under the proposed actions. That's something that we would dig into much more specifically when we come to develop that ordinance. And the reason is that, there's many different approaches that cities have taken. The people that have implemented this kind of flexible measures compliance have assigned point values to certain energy efficiency measures. So, the smaller changes would be, a couple of points, and large changes would count for more points. And then there's a total point score that the project has to achieve. And that point score, that's the target that is established by the city, depends on the size and scope of the project and the type of project. So that would be something that would be figured out at the time when we're really doing the research for that ordinance to put that in place.
And then all these, you have, page after page after page of goals and implementation methods. Those things are all cumulative, I would imagine. In other words, not one single thing is going to help us with this problem. It's all cumulative?
Correct, yes. So where we could quantify the estimated savings, we did that, and then the total savings that you see is those numbers added up. But there are many measures where it's not really possible for us to quantify, and so there's no emission savings associated with those in that quantification, and that's why I said our estimate is somewhat conservative, because we would likely get more savings than we could really quantify with our estimation measures.
Okay, and I'm not quite as pessimistic as my council associate. I do see all these little bits and pieces coming together to help us work with this warming issue that we're faced with. Whether or not China gets all on board or not, it reminds me of the old story of the million starfish on the beach, and the kid walks over and throws one in the ocean. Dad says, "Did that solve anything?" Well, I helped that one. So we're doing our bit, which I think is, it'll be cumulative if we get enough people to do that, enough countries and cities.
All right, thank you, Mr. Engler. Mr. Bowers.
And just to build on a point, Mr. Engler and any of the council, as you prepare for a adoption hearing in May, you mentioned prioritization. To be very clear, this is an implementation document of the general plan, right? This is a big one. This is the city's first climate and environmental action plan. So you mentioned leaf blowers. If there's a desire by the council in particular to see a prioritization around a certain area, certainly let that be known at that time. It's good information for us, because that will help us to be able, staff has some perspectives, but it's also an opportunity for us to advance some of those things in different priority order as we go through that at the adoption hearing on the 7th. That adoption will drive all the necessary next steps in terms of what will happen from there.
Mayor, follow-up question on that. When will the county be coming forth with their plan on incentivizing the conversion over to electric from gas leaf blowers?
They said in a couple of months.
Okay, look forward to that, and hopefully they hold to that timetable. That will assist us.
And it's an important point. There's been a lot of There's some jurisdictions that have gone out ahead and done these kinds of events. The alignment here is important because easing that transition, there is an equity component here for a lot of landscape companies, financial burden and everything associated with that. So this alignment, Dr. Cox has been very closely in contact with the Regional Energy Alliance as they've gone through this because they're the funding source to be able to put these rebate programs forward. Alignment with that and the phase-in is very important in terms of timing.
Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would it be appropriate at this time to offer suggestions? I'm pretty much through with my questions, but I have a few suggestions.
Well, we're in the question period at this point.
All right.
But
I'll
we'll
hold
be
off
certainly
then.
happy to listen to your suggestions
Oh, okay.
at the appropriate time. Did
Okay.
you have another question, Mr. Taylor? No? Okay. I will say to Bob, I do think our housing strategy in the long run, as we build along the 101 corridor, with pedestrian-friendly infill-type projects, will in fact lower vehicle miles traveled. It's just going to take some time. Just my opinion. Anyway, is that a question? What?
Just
Cliff,
one more
go
comment,
ahead.
Mr. Mayor. Just for point of clarification. So Bob, kind of the answer to your question a little bit is when we go to update this document 5 years from now, and we have, we've built some of our general plan, hopefully we move forward with some of that, we actually will update all the measurements, and that'll show us where we, what we have now is a projection, and that'll show us what we've actually achieved as we talk about what we want to do next time.
No, that's my point is, I think we're on the right track, as the mayor has indicated, that we're on the right track. It'd be nice to get some verification as we start rolling these things out, that yes, vehicle miles traveled has been affected, and by association, GHG production as well.
That's a good point, to try to quantify the lowering of VMT based on our building strategy. Okay, great. Yes, Dr. Cox.
I just wanted to make one more comment. We do have Lexi Journey, who's from Rincon Consulting. They conducted the peer review of the document and the GHG methodology, and they're online on Zoom if you have any questions or comments for them, or questions, I guess.
Okay. I just had a couple of brief questions. But back to the leaf blower business. So you mentioned that we're going to notify some of the big landscaping companies that we work with, which is great. My concern is, what about these small independent operators, that you see them all over Thousand Oaks, the single truck, mom and pop kind of operator. I don't want them to fall into some kind of violation without even knowing it. Is there a way that they can be informed, that they can turn in their equipment?
Well, hopefully they have a business license with the city, and if they have a business license, they'll get a letter from us.
Oh, that's a good, okay, so we can track the business license and contact them that way?
Yes.
Okay, good. I don't want to leave them out. And the other thing is, I must say I'm pleasantly surprised to see these projects coming before us that are voluntarily electrifying, wait, that's not the right word, electrification, not electrifying themselves, electrification. So it looks like that flexible compliance is working in that sense. Because frankly, I thought there was going to be some pushback. So what do you attribute the fact that T.O. Ranch and the Hillcrest Affordable Project, for Sale Project, all are completely, compliant and want to go all electric? Is it because it's cheaper, or?
Yeah, I think a couple of different things. The energy efficiency of the electric products is much greater than the previous generation of the gas alternatives, so they gain energy efficiency. They save costs because they're not running dual infrastructure to the development. They're only paying for the electric infrastructure. And as of the beginning of last year, anything that was permitted after that point, the building code that went into effect, the California Building Code, required developers to make their buildings electric ready. So even if they were going to put in, even if they hadn't thought about putting in electric stoves and they were going to do gas, they still have to run the electric service to the kitchen in preparation for if someone in the future was going to do that. And the same for the furnace, they still have to run the electric circuit as if it was going to be a heat pump. So by the time they've run all those electric circuits and put the capacity at the service panel, which they have to do, it's definitely cheaper for them just to put in the electric appliances at that point.
Well, that's good. It's a win all the way around. What about restaurants that, you know, like they want to use gas for certain cooking techniques?
I know that there has been some talk about that, but I think that there may be some cooking styles that lend themselves to that particular, medium for one reason or another. But in general, a lot of more of the professional chefs are adopting induction stoves because you have much finer control over the exact temperature, and they can also heat things much quicker. They're much safer, and they're much easier to clean. So again, I think the new technologies are probably preferable for most people, but it's the unfamiliarity. You have that barrier to overcome of people being unfamiliar, and the same is probably true with restaurants, right? That they're not so familiar with that. But yeah, I mean, if it's imperative that they have to have gas, that's where the flexibility comes in.
So that's where the flexibility would come in then?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Mayor, may I add a comment to that
understand.
from an engineering standpoint?
What's that?
May I add a comment to that from an engineering standpoint, given that previous background's engineering?
Certainly.
Is that in the 1960s and 70s, many homes went over to all electric. They were medallion homes, and they were very pleased because compared to natural gas, it was the most cost-effective way of doing it. And unfortunately, the price of electricity skyrocketed, and 20 years later, 10 years later, they regretted it because they looked at the price of natural gas versus electric, and they regret that they went over to all electric in their home. Let's fast forward to where we are today. In my home, we pay $20 a month for natural gas and about $120 for electric, which used to be $60 a month 3, 4, 5 years ago. So we're seeing it go up. Now, with the builders, it's less expensive for them just to do all electric. But those tenants in those apartments are going to pay a lot more. And it's sort of like buying that copy machine that's on sale. Oh, you got the deal on the copy machine, but they're going to get you on those toner cartridges every time you have to replace it. That's what we have here. So in a few years, you're going to see electric go up even more, and those buyer remorse is going to happen. Yes, the builder put in those inexpensive apartments because they were able to put in all electric. And if they don't do all electric, special interest groups come forth, and under CEQA, they will delay the project, which causes the price to go up as they delay it in state court to say this is environmentally not good and we want to delay the project. Same thing the unions do is that they want a certain percentage of union labor, and behind the scenes, the developer negotiates a deal with the unions. They do the same with special interest, in this case, the climate folks. So it drives up the price of the project. They're going to pay more in the long run because they won't have natural gas. But that's just what we have in our current system of using CEQA to be weaponized for special interest. That's another perspective, Mayor, that you may want to consider.
Yeah. Well, cost is always a consideration. Of course, the global warming phenomenon was not recognized back in the 60s. I don't remember it back then.
I remember when we were going to go into an ice age in the 1970s. Remember that one? That didn't happen, did it?
Well, it's kind of interesting that you brought that up. The council, a little while back, joined the Clean Power Alliance, which and we joined to 100%, which, to our credit, I believe, because I must say, you pay a little bit more for electric, but we dropped greenhouse gases from electric from 26% down to 6%. So we are getting results. So you know how it is. Nothing's free in life, that's for sure. But
yes, sir. Atmosphere is still 0.4%.
But I think you have a point. You know, certainly Southern Cal Ed can be a little unpredictable in what they charge people.
Do you think?
Yeah, just a little.
Mayor? just a quick point of information on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
As our city's representative and director on the Clean Power Alliance, I'm happy to say that given the current round of rates that we just mulled through and passed at CPA, and versus the current round of rates that SCE passed, that SCE is actually lower in all three tiers of power that have renewable or clean components.
Okay.
So it was the case, you're correct, that there was a small premium at the time we joined, but that is no longer the case.
Well, it was farsighted on our part, because at the time, the greenhouse gas challenge wasn't quite as pronounced as it is now, and I'm glad that the council decided to go that way. All right, let's onward here. We'll come back for discussion after our speakers, but we do have some speakers this evening, and I'd like to go to them. First up, we have Clint Fultz. In person. How about that? How you doing tonight, Clint?
I'm doing good. I do exist in 3 dimensions.
I'm going to say it.
All right, where's my time? Okay, it started. Hello, my name is Clint Fultz. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks and a member of the Conejo Climate Coalition. I'd like to start by thanking Dr. Helen Cox and John Brooks and everyone in the Sustainability Division for creating such an excellent climate and environmental action plan. This plan is absolutely vital as we face the increasing consequences of the climate crisis. It's life or death. According to the British Medical Journal, pollution from fossil fuel use is killing 5 million people worldwide every single year. You might hear some people say that we shouldn't prioritize electric appliances over gas-powered appliances, that we should let the free market decide what people will purchase. Putting the reality of the climate crisis aside for a moment, I'd like to point out that an International Monetary Fund analysis found that the total subsidies for oil, gas, and coal in 2022 were over $7 trillion. That's trillion with a T. That means that fossil fuels are being subsidized by the big bad government at a rate of over $13 million a minute. Does that sound like the free market to you? Back here on Earth, where we're witnessing the impacts of the climate crisis firsthand, we need to electrify everything. Electrification backed by renewable energy should be our #1 priority. Concerning a citywide mandate on residential building electrification, we'd like to see the city follow San Francisco's lead by adopting and enforcing a gas-free mandate in all new buildings. Here's a headline from KQED. San Francisco will continue enforcing new building gas ban despite Berkeley's repeal of similar rules. And here's a quote. No one has come to us asking us to change or repeal our law, said Supervisor Rafael Mendelman. We continue to enforce it, continue to implement it, consistent with the court decision in the Berkeley case. So we would ask that the council consider mandating that all new residential buildings be electrified. We would also ask you to read the letter that the Conejo Climate Coalition submitted with our detailed comments on electrification and all the other areas of concern. We endorse the Climate and Environmental Action Plan. We think it's great, but we would like to see it go even further. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Clint. Katzelm is next.
Thank you. I also exist. Good evening. Good to see you. Good evening, council members, honorable mayor. And I just want to start by also thanking City Council for your dedication to this effort. It's been a few years, so thank you for sticking with it and remembering about the CAP. And thank you, Sustainability Department, for all your hard work. And Dr. Cox, we hope that you think about us when you're on the beaches in Maui enjoying your retirement. Thank you for all your hard work and dedication and everything you've given to this city. We really appreciate you. I just want to say quickly that this isn't a part of what I wrote, but that, what is the price for a livable future? This concerns people of a younger generation, even more importantly than people who may not survive this crisis. So I just want you to think about that when you're making decisions about greenhouse gas emissions. There's a lot to love in the Climate and Environmental Action Plan. However, I'll just focus on one area that the Conejo Climate Coalition chose to discuss in our comment letter that Clint mentioned, and we submitted to you a few days ago, and that's retrofits. And that's something that Dr. Cox mentioned. Retrofitting existing buildings, especially multifamily, especially in environmental justice communities, should be a huge priority here to help us meet our targets, as buildings make up the second largest, most stubborn emission sources in the city, existing buildings. I want to call your attention to some models that the city could follow to help make this program more effective, scalable, and equitable. And some of them include the Irvine's expanded One Irvine program and Ithaca's electrification program. Both of these cities have inspiring projects that we could pilot right here with some ingenuity and some funding. I encourage you to read more about these in our comment letter. We'd like to see the Climate and Environmental Action Plan provide additional incentives to encourage retrofits and explore creative financing to scale single and multifamily retrofits. We want to echo language from another comment letter you also received that programs like these need to be done equitably and with tenant protections in mind. That's very vital. So thank you so much for your time and consideration. And I just want to mention we're very supportive of the CAP. We're very excited to see it happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Next up, Faith Grant.
Good evening. I exist too. My name is Faith Grant, and I'm a resident of Westlake Village. And I'd like to thank Dr. Helen Cox and the sustainability staff, as well as the stakeholders, for their work. It's been a 3-year process with setbacks from waste haulers to drought, and the general plan to finally develop a climate action plan. In 2014, the city identified a climate action plan as a top 10 priority and started actual work in 2020. Given that it's taken 10 years to get to this point, and also given the short time we have to adapt and slow down global warming, it's urgent that we incorporate this climate action plan rapidly. To that end, Conejo Climate Coalition has submitted 8 pages of comments and suggestions on the CAP. And our coalition partners, CFROG, Climate First, Replacing Oil and Gas, and CEC, Community Environmental Council, have also reviewed the plan and submitted letters of recommendations. 2 of the Conejo Climate Coalition recommendations I think that will promote success are funding and yearly reviews. On funding, it is difficult to understand what this plan will cost, and we would appreciate more information about funding to cover these goals. In our supporting documentation, we noted that Brookings evaluated 50 cities and their plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Only 66% of the cities certified funding sources. To bring this down to the City of Thousand Oaks level, we recommended a provision for better funding and enforcement of the 2022 City Ordinance on banning single-use rigid and expanded polyurethane products and automatic distribution of plastic beverage straws and cutlery inside food establishments. Speaking of straws, on average, Americans use 1.5 plastic drinking straws every day, totaling to 500 million per day. The second recommendation is that we would like to see annual city council updates in addition to the annual dashboard updates. It's a good dashboard, and we don't believe that every 5 years is adequate in terms of progress on the plan. Successful climate action plans must be detailed, data-driven, and accountable. Accountability is successful. Implementation can be ensured through frequent reporting to City Council and people of Thousand Oaks. We look eagerly forward to acceptance, funding, implementation, and monitoring of this plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have Jackson Piper here with us remotely.
Thank you, Mayor Adam and members of the City Council. My name is Jackson Piper from unincorporated Newbury Park. You know me as a housing activist with Ventura County YIMBY and Conejo Housing Coalition. I'm speaking today on my own behalf. As a housing activist, I have spent a lot of time over the last few years trying to get Ventura County cities, especially Thousand Oaks, to add more housing within our already built out cityscapes. And I couldn't do that with a clear conscience without also advocating for better climate policies, better environmental policies. I want to thank Dr. Cox and members of the Conejo Climate Coalition and city staff and members of the City Council for bringing this document to fruition here. I think it's a very good document to start with, and I think the Thousand Oaks, the City of Thousand Oaks should build upon this, continue to improve upon it whenever new data becomes available about how we can. I want to touch especially on the transportation aspect of this document. I note that on page 44 and on page 26 in figure 2.1, transportation is listed as 63% of the city's greenhouse gas emissions. I think the transportation environment in Thousand Oaks, even though it may be a bit difficult for people to accept, we should really try and use our space on roads more efficiently than we currently do. I laud the city for the goal of increasing ridership on transit by 20% by 2030. I laud all of the bike lane improvements and bike safety improvements the city is planning on doing, the active transportation plan. Please, let's have more of that. And I will note that a 2021 study, the climate change mitigation effects of daily active travel in cities, shows in table 2 that under the parameters of the study, which did not yet include mostly electric vehicles, a bicycle would generate about 1.35% of the emissions of a car over its life cycle. A public transportation, assuming diesel, would generate 42% of emissions of a car per capita over its life cycle. And really, what we need to do is find ways to incentivize more public transportation use in Thousand Oaks and more use of walking and bicycling to get to destinations. These should be seen as valuable services for people in the city, more so than they are right now. Well, with that, I'll leave it to other commenters, but thank you very much, and please move this forward.
Thank you very much. I believe that concludes our public comments. Staff, would you like to respond?
Okay, so we had some comments about how the programs need to be done equitably, and with tenant protections and looking at some incentives. I would say that we can look at incentives perhaps down the road as part of a budget process. What we would like to do is to start work on this and then track our progress. We do a budget process every 2 years. And as part of that biannual budget process, we look at where we are and what we need funding for. So there were some comments that we didn't have a very detailed funding section in this plan. That's because we haven't struggled for funding. We've been able to fund basically all the projects that we've had the time really to implement. That includes the electric vehicle infrastructure. We're trying to get that in as quickly, as expeditiously as we can, given that, that's a partnership with the utility also. So we have funding. That isn't an issue to get that into place. It's more just the time that it takes to go through the engineering and the utility with that. Some of the other things also looking at battery storage, microgrids, things like that. We have 4 of those already in place. We have funding for a couple more. That hasn't been a challenge as far as the city is concerned to get the funding to do those initiatives. The same when it comes to solar. We're converting all of our city facilities, putting solar on all of that. Hasn't been an issue. We've done the cost-benefit analysis. It's been funded. So the reason that we haven't gone into details about the funding is that the budget for these things hasn't really prevented us in any way from moving ahead as fast as we can. And right now, with the incentives through the IRA and through the state, there's plenty of money out there. It's a matter of being ready and prepared to apply for that. So we do address that every 2 years as we prepare the city's budget. There was a comment that the progress needs to be evaluated more than every 5 years. So what I would say is that we're going to be reporting on the emissions every year, so we'll be able to track our emissions compared to our projections every year. The point is that we would be looking at updating the plan every 5 years. And when we do that, we can redo the traffic modeling. We can't redo the traffic modeling every year. It's a big process in and of itself. So we would do that every 5 years and do all the renewed projections every 5 years, and that's when we would make any changes to the plan at that point. But the tracking and the monitoring would be at least annually. And as far as, trying to be more aggressive in some areas, we've strived for balance here. There's some, we can't put excessive burdens on the building side of things, on the building industry, development industry. A good chunk of our emissions come from existing homes. That's a part that needs to be tackled. We don't want to make housing any more costly than it needs to be. So as far as sort of incentives and where we're putting our focus, again, some areas we've been more aggressive than others. Probably in the electric vehicles is where we're trying to be most aggressive, and that's because there's a fair amount of funding for that, and also that it's something that you're bought in for a lot of years once you go there. So again, it's the idea is that it's a balanced plan. We're trying to do things equitably. We do have a fair number of provisions in the plan that are reaching out specifically to lower income areas. And in fact, when we reach out with the Energy Ambassador program, many of the rebates and incentives that are available from the state and from the utilities are income-based. And so certainly we are meeting with those communities to talk about that. And in fact, we have a partnership that we're setting up right now with some of those nonprofit organizations that work with those particular residents to have them participate in workshops and then actually do outreach amongst their own communities on some of these incentives. So one of the pieces that we're working on right now is to train people from those communities to sort of act as ambassadors within the community and help spread the word.
All right, thanks you, Dr. Cox. Any further questions of staff?
Mayor, if I may, just one more comment.
Certainly.
So you heard a public comment tonight regarding a representative from San Francisco stating something about they would not follow the city of Berkeley rescission of their ban on gas stoves. I want to caution you just that there was a case that came down from the city of Berkeley. It was the California Restaurant Association versus the city of Berkeley. And in that case, the city of Berkeley had adopted a ban on the installation of natural gas building infrastructure in all newly constructed buildings, and including buildings that were not occupied or being used as of January of 2020. And the Restaurant Association sued in federal court and claiming that the Energy Policy and Conservation Act, or EPCA, preempted that ordinance that banned the gas stoves and gas ovens. The Ninth Circuit went to the Ninth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit found that the EPCA's preemption clause expressly prohibited this type of ordinance, and as a result, the Ninth Circuit ruled that the ban was invalid because it barred systems related to the use of the end product, which included gas stoves or gas ovens. And as of last week, I believe that I read that the city of Berkeley finally did rescind their ordinance for the ban, and they paid or reached a settlement regarding the lawsuit for damages that were claimed in that case.
Yes, and I believe, I have a little article on that actually myself. I believe Contra Costa County also rescinded their all-electric building requirement due to the Ninth Circuit decision. Anyway, let us move on to discussion. Mr. Newman, you look like you want to discuss some things.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I do. Again, my appreciation to staff for working for many years and to past councils for identifying this in the first place. We are a leader here, and we're fortunate that our government is working on this issue. Dr. Cox mentioned in the area of retrofitting that the gray water systems are problematic and that they're hugely expensive to install and then also to operate, and that makes them problematic with existing structures. But there's another thing I think we can do with existing structures, and that's to continue to encourage, streamline, incentivize everything we can do to put in more rooftop solar in our city. We have some, but we have a lot more existing stock that doesn't have rooftop solar. And if we do that, particularly when we do this in concert with battery storage, we certainly are addressing a climate need, no question. And there are incentives available to help residents with this. There's no question there's a climate benefit from that. But there's also a disaster recovery and resiliency benefit from that as well, in that when power goes out, as happens too often here, happened at our house a couple of days ago, with and to a couple of thousand other residents nearby, not sure what happened there. When there are microgrids at each house, that becomes a non-issue. And it also brings power closer to us, again, on disaster recovery or resiliency grounds. If we're not getting solar from huge ground solar installations out in the desert and having to transport it over long distances, there's less of an issue of keeping the lights on here. And there's also less of a cost issue, which might help address my colleagues' concern that prices would go up. We have solar at our house, and I love that we are now a seller of power in addition to a consumer. So having that power as close to the source as it can be, I think would be one way we could help residents address not only a climate need, but also a resiliency need here. The other thing I wanted to, the other area I wanted to address is in terms of transport and bikes. There have been some comments made that we do need to look more at cycling and at mass transit, and I would agree. I'm all for EVs. I voted for several large housing projects that have more EV chargers, and I encourage that. But let's be frank, we are not going to EV our way out of the climate crisis. As good a thing as conversion to lower emitting or non-carbon emitting vehicles is, we need to get that carbon ceiling down further. So some things we could do in the area of bikes, and these are, I believe, all low-cost steps we could take. We can encourage development of more bicycle racks, more parking. This is a standard part of any new building project. We always require new racks, but we could work with existing projects to get more racks put in place. I know that's an issue personally in many shopping areas around town. Is there's just not often adequate places to safely lock bikes. We could look at further development of bicycle routes as part of the ATP, the transportation plan. And I'm not necessarily talking about more bike lanes here. We could have routes through and between neighborhoods. These are not necessarily having to redraw existing roads or anything like that, but getting more connectivity, not only within, but also between neighborhoods, I think would be a big plus. And then also, let's see. I think I had one more. I'm sorry, I had getting between neighborhoods and within neighborhoods as two different things, and they are basically the same ask, which is that we encourage creation of bike lanes or paths or whatever we want to call them, in addition to the very good work we're already doing on bike lanes on existing roads. I think all those things would help get us closer to bringing that transportation sector carbon target down closer to where we need it to be. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Anyone else care to chime in? Mr. McNamee?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, thank you for the report. It's something that needs to be tried and done, but I don't think it's going to make the impact that we think it's going to have on overall carbon in the atmosphere around the world unless China and India jump on board. The challenges 45 years ago to looking at solar as well as battery power. I remember in my courses in engineering school, the challenge was what to do with the battery and the heavy metals once it's been used. Also, heavy metals being used in making solar panels and the batteries are becoming much more in limited supply. And we will hit a point sometime in the near future that we will not have the materials to make solar panels and or batteries. The other is that solar panels' life is about 30 years. At 20 years, it drops off dramatically and needs to be replaced. Right now, the industry is facing a challenge of what to do with those panels that have been spent. How do they extract those metals or dispose of them safely? So this is not all a panacea that, oh, let's do batteries, let's do solar, that's going to solve our problems. You just created a whole nother realm of using the resources from our environment that will be running out shortly, and where do we dispose of the spent batteries and solar panels. Also, if we look at solar as being, as my council member enthusiastically says, there's a lot of houses that don't have solar. Unless you've got a southern-facing roof or a western-facing roof, or you've got wonderful, wonderful trees that keep it cool during the summertime and warm during the winter, or cool during the summertime, warm during the wintertime, it doesn't pay to put the solar in. And so not every house, not every home, its roof line was designed for solar, and that doesn't pencil out. Again, I gave you an example of my household because we've got wonderful shrubbery around it, trees that shade us during the summertime. Our average electric price has gone up. It's doubled in the last 4 or 5 years to $120. I've done this study on it. It does not pencil out for me to put a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 solar panel system on there because we'll never get the rate of return. It'll be at 30 years. Why do it? So I appreciate the enthusiasm to get everyone to go solar and put it on your roof, but it doesn't work for certain roof lines and certain shrubbery around the house. So I support what you're doing here for this climate attempt. I'm not as optimistic as my colleague, Councilmember Engler, but on the other hand, it's worth a try, and why not? But we'll see in 30, 40 years if we're still here on the earth or if it's burned up as people have been predicting for the last 10, 15 years. Mayor?
All right. Mr. Engler.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Earlier you were speaking about being back in the 60s, and we do share that in common. We were both back there in the 60s.
If you remember the 60s, you weren't there, Bob. Don't forget that.
Good point. I didn't think of that. But I also remember in the 60s, there was no such thing, and we didn't use sunscreen. And that's a decision that we all now regret as we visit the dermatologists.
Bright red children running around with no sunscreen.
My point is, I think that was a mistake in those days not to do that. I would think it would be a mistake for us now not to aggressively move forward with this plan. My my reservations with the plan is that there's some things that I have a very long horizon, and I'm looking for one right now, where we won't even implement until 2029. And some of these horizons are pretty long. I would like to see us cut those down as much as we can so we can get this thing going quicker. I hate to pour more work on staff to get these things done, but I believe time is of the essence, and I don't want us to miss this opportunity. In terms of the plan overall, my hat is off to staff for having put this together with input from people like the Climate Coalition and other people in the community. These are things that we as a council, we get to make the decision on these things, but we only get to stand on the shoulders of everybody who put the work together for us. So thanks to everybody who contributed to this. I noted the other day, there's a list of people who were involved in this development of this plan. And I think that we need to honor those people and be as expeditious as we can in making this go forward. And that's just my comment. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. As Mr. Newman stated about offering more bike options and I'll just tell you the idea that maybe we won't be able to reduce emissions by going all electric on cars. I had two thoughts when you said that. One, we go to Ojai and we go to Ventura all the time with the kids. Like, I really like the bike pass. Like, it's a really fun thing for our family to go out and do. One thing that is interesting is sometimes we forget what technology is doing, and how that could potentially make a big impact in this discussion. As we look at, like, I drive a Tesla, the thing drives without me, right? And as we move into more AI or having robo-taxis or cars that drive themselves, I think there's actually a really good probability that we actually don't own cars individually, and you start seeing way less cars. I mean, maybe we don't even have garages in our homes any longer. Who knows? But all I'm saying with that is I do think we will see technology increase further and further out where maybe it will be more helpful in this conversation. I would agree with Mr. Engler. I do think this is very important. I think there's some things in it I would like to look at, potentially bringing up for discussion on some change. Mr. Engler pointed out some things that he'd want to speed up. There's a couple things that I would actually like to have a conversation about potentially slowing down. One of those is when we talked about the housing market and increasing the percentage of charging for the parking that's allocated towards the building. Right now, the real estate market is not healthy. We have not come close to getting out of the challenges that we're facing. We have a lot of projects that are entitled, ready to go. People aren't building. The debt market has not worked itself out yet. And so I guess my concern would be adding too much cost to potentially prolong that out. Now, where I agree, I think a lot of these developers will actually put more parking in by choice. I mean, you're constantly thinking, how do I create a service that will be, or in this case, a product, that would be more desirable for the tenant. And if that's something that you offer, that's that makes your probability of somebody going with you maybe more desirable than the person next to you. The conversation about the cost of having to reinstall down the road once a project is already complete, you need to consider that, right? So I would actually like to have the conversation about not requiring that they have to. I would like to maybe have a conversation about let's see how they perform doing it themselves so we don't put ourselves in a situation where we don't have more housing coming. The mayor brought something up about the landscapers, and like the landscapers for my house, it's a four-man crew. Like, it's not one of these big, not even national firms, not even one of the big state firms or even county. Where I do have a concern, and the speed in which we do that, when we talk about some of these programs that are being created where you can have a one-for-one and have the opportunity to trade some of your old equipment in for new equipment, that's like a business owner's dream. You mean I get new stuff without having to pay for it? But we know that some of this stuff gets delayed. Sometimes the funding runs out. That's something that we just saw with the California Dreamers Act, where they put $330 million into a fund, and they would give you a down payment for a house in exchange for a percentage of depreciation. That money was gone in 11 days. So I guess the concern I have is for that small business owner. I don't want to force them out of business because the cost to move into the new required equipment is great, right? Like I called a friend of mine that runs a bigger landscape business, and the numbers he gave me, because they just actually went through this transition to get ahead of what's to come, which is the state law changing it so that you can no longer sell gas-powered, in this case, blowers. He mentioned that it cost him $250 per battery, and each battery lasts for an hour and a half, and the average use for their blower through the day is 6 hours, so they had to get 4 batteries, and they're constantly having to charge them on site. So, do I believe that an electric product is going to become more, it's going to be cheaper and a better product? I do think we're going to get there. I actually, something that, is it Clint? That Clint mentioned about, the free market not being the free market, and with oil and subsidies, when we talk about regulation, I actually agree. When you have too much involvement, the free market is no longer the free market. In our case, in America, it's not truly a free market. And so I just want to be careful that we're not adding more regulation that's only going to incentivize the big company and hurt the little guy. So, is there something we can do where we revisit this part in a year to see how these, rebates or incentive programs have been brought to the market? Because I truly believe that will be a natural evolution that we will see in the market. It makes sense. If they're offering you a better product and you get to trade in your old stuff for free, every business owner is going to take that. So those are my thoughts. I'm curious to hear kind of those around those specific items. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. And I do appreciate you bringing that up about the small independent operator. These people work hard, and I too do not want to see them penalized. I'm sure there's a way we can slowly phase them in without undue economic hardship. I appreciate you bringing that up. I'll just say that nobody says this is going to be easy, especially the transportation part. 65% of the greenhouse gases come from transportation. So when you drive around Thousand Oaks, what's the most prominent feature you see on every house in Thousand Oaks? Garages, right? 2-car, 3-car, and beyond. I mean, this city was built as a car city way back when. We sprawled out 55 square miles. We got a lot of open space, but basically the idea was to drive to your different destinations and then drive back home again. So, we've been working hard to try to change that whole mindset, especially with our housing strategy along the 101 corridor, mixed use, get people out of their cars, get people walking. But it's going to take some time. But, the idea about bicycles from Councilmember Newman is great. I think the city's been very responsive and receptive to bike lanes and encouraging biking. Electric vehicles, we just got that $6 million grant from the federal government, and we're putting EV chargers in some more of our disadvantaged neighborhoods, where there's apartments and the like, where they don't maybe have as much access to EV chargers as others. So I think that's a good start. But yeah, it's going to take some time and a shift in attitudes. But from what I see, I think most people get it. I think most people get it, and they understand that we got to bring this GHG count down. And the city's all on board with wanting to do that. We're all on board. So I guess I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Newman, why don't you go ahead?
Gratefully and enthusiastically, I move we adopt 11A based on staff's recommendations.
Thank you very much. And we do have a motion on the floor, and I'll call for the vote.
Councilmember Engler?
Just a clarification, we're just receiving the input, giving our input back.
Yeah,
We're not
I was-
adopting tonight, right?
Yeah, I was going to offer the same. I think that's
Yeah,
what.
it's a recommend-
This
yeah.
is coming in, a recommendation coming in. We've got feedback. What you'll see in May, we'll take that feedback, kind of
Right.
amalgamate it, and come up
Right.
with some suggestions for you. And that'll be an opportunity for you to incorporate what you want to incorporate in the adoption of the document.
That's
Thank you.
absolutely right. Feedback from the council members, so staff can, change things up a little if need be. This is just the initial draft. We'll come back for a public hearing.
This
May
is
7th.
a study session, so yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes, that's exactly right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we do have a motion on the floor. Call for the vote, please.
Councilmember Engler?
Yes.
Councilmember McNamee?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newman?
Aye.
And Mayor Adam?
Yes,
And that motion passes 5-0.
thank you very much. And now we will go to our city manager, Mr. Powers, for announcements and upcoming issues.
Thanks, Mayor Adam. Our next meeting will be on 2 weeks from tonight on the 23rd of April. Our annual priority session will be held at the Grant R. Brimhall Library in the community room at 6 o'clock. So that is on the 23rd of April. Looking forward to that.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. And this evening, we're going to adjourn our meeting in memory of a distinguished community member, Brett Taylor. Brett passed away on March 18th. He was fondly known as Brother Brett. He volunteered with many organizations, including the Sheriff's Department and the Ventura County Fire Department. He was born in 1957, and Brett moved to Thousand Oaks when he was 8 years old. He was recognized as a person with a disability, and he attended Thousand Oaks and Rio Mesa high schools, where he is remembered by classmates as charismatic and also an athlete, winning several medals in swimming and track at the Special Olympics in his teens. Brett served our community as a dedicated volunteer for numerous service clubs and church groups, and he was deeply proud of all his volunteer work. He was a volunteer football coach at Thousand Oaks and Westlake High School. He participated in basketball and baseball at both schools. He also worked with school security at both locations and had an honorary supervisory role at the Oaks Mall Security. Over a career of 40 years, Brett was best known as a dynamic volunteer for public agencies, including Ventura County Fire and the Sheriff's Department. The department actually issued him a clipboard, a volunteer badge, a jacket, and a handheld radio. And Brett had a fire department rank, training level 7. He was also given a personalized fire station patch with his image and his name on it. Brett was also an avid race car fan. He attended races and worked at Ventura Raceway and Paris Raceway in Riverside County, and he was even able to drive a sprint car around the track at Ventura Raceway. Brett accomplished a lot in his lifetime, and so tonight we honor Brett Taylor by remembering his iconic catchphrase, "Good job a little bit." Brett, you will be greatly missed by your family, a multitude of professional colleagues, and a huge, wide net of close friends. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to adjourn our meeting, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.